The Archon quest is finally here, and oh boy do I have some stuff I want to break down before I break down. So without further ado, here are my theories, analyses, discussions, the whole nitpicking galore into the Archon quest of 2.6. And before we begin, this will have massive spoilers because I am connecting and further theorizing from the content in the Archon quest. Call me Doctor because we are dissecting this like how he dissected 138 missing children. Or was it 139? I can't remember. Also, I will be assuming you've understood the story and this isn't your first time walking through this. I will also refer to Lumine as my sibling for pronoun's sake.
Hey Catherine, got any new commissions for us today? Also, how come you look so happy to see us? What have you done?
I went to the shrine to draw a fortune slip earlier. The shrine maiden told me that it is the season for an unexpected reunion.
Okay, so when you say unexpected reunion, you mean running into us, right?
Who can say? But the anticipation of knowing that an unexpected reunion is due is making me happy to see everyone I cross paths with today.
Opening us up with Catherine being the mysterious entity as always, this line of dialogue actually reveals a whole lot about the events of the Archon quest, where the unexpected reunion comes in the form of Dainsleif and Halfdan. Additionally, Paimon hits us with the important question of how and why in the world did Catherine get all the way to Inazuma and back? Or why was she even drawing fortune slips in the first place? Catherine obviously doesn't explain it, and I swear she's the real protagonist of Genshin Impact. But this actually supports the theory that Catherine is able to use the waypoints for some unknown reason. Honestly, while it's possible that she is a robot, all I can say is that I am a firm believer Catherine isn't human altogether.
Very well. Ad Astra Abyssosk. This time you are truly bound for the Abyss. Good luck to you both.
Following through with this, she does have knowledge of the Abyss and has been the first person to contact the Traveler whenever anything abyssal happens. In 1.3, she introduces to the mysterious blonde man in an eye patch and basically hinted that we should go look for him. In 1.4, she was also the start of the mission with Dain, and now we have this. I doubt it's a coincidence, but I don't think Catherine's significance to the abyssal plot is still fully realized. So this line of dialogue sets the scene for what we can expect in the story. Now we have the Chasm being open to the public. The Chasm was a place sealed off by the Millelith and the Liyue after the horrible calamity. This is the location of the tenacity of the Millelith and presumably where the Purple Yaksha met their end. It's only recently been opened up, but we know that the Fatui and the Liyue had an agreement to allow the Fatui to investigate into the calamity. This agreement lasted before the events of the Liyue Archon quest. The Chasm is also known as the huge abyss of stratified rock in Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. The rock structures in the chasm are also connected to the geological stratified rock structures where its namesake comes from.
While one of the miners was on a break, he suddenly noticed a few hilly trolls walking his way. They seemed like they were in a daze or something.
Now we go over to the hilichurl situation in the trailer, where hilichurls are clouded with mysterious energy before entering the chasm that used to be sealed off. This is where we cut off to the world quest, Surreptitious 7-star Seal Sundering, where we follow Chi-Chiong in breaking the seal placed by the Liyue to enter the chasm proper. I won't be going into this because I'm still having more flashbacks for how long this unvoiced dialogue-heavy world quest was. But opening the chasm proper, we find the mysterious underground upside-down civilization older than Khaenri'ah itself. And here we find Dainsleif.
Whole city that's floating in the air! Upside down? Just look at this place. Doesn't it remind you of something?
You know, the statue we never really broke apart in the 1.4 Archon quest that is still in there. At the mention of the defiled statue, I actually have several theories on why the defiled statue was needed in the first place by the Abyss. This Archon quest continues with the theme of purifying the sins of the past and cleansing the people of Khaenri'ah from the curse. If this location is known as the only way to cleanse the curse, I bet that they were trying to recreate its properties through the defiled statue. The Abyss might have used this location, or more specifically, the upside-down purification pools inside as an inspiration for the defiled statue. Both of them seem to have divine properties, and it's possible that the defiled statue was a way to mimic that kind of celestial energy remotely. Think about it this way. While this place would be a good way to revitalize the curse, there's no guarantee it would work or that it would even be strong enough. Not to mention, limiting your activities to only the chasm because that is the only way they can cleanse themselves is impractical. So consider the defiled statue of the Seven as a prototype for a portable cleansing pool, a purification totem like how we as travelers use the divine powers of the statue to heal or rejuvenate. So we actually find out two things. First is that the Abyss portals can be redirected by an abyssal entity, meaning the scene from 1.4 where the traveler couldn't enter was most likely because the herald or the sibling didn't want them to follow. Dainsleif, being from Conria, could have bypassed the entrance requirements, but was unable to completely follow because he was sent to Mondstadt. Next one is that the Abyss Herald we fight in this story is not the same as the Abyss Herald we saw in 1.4. Then we ask about the eye of the first field teller, and Dainsleif assures us that it's in a safe place. First and foremost, this is absolutely sketchy. There are multiple theories on who Dainsleif is in present time. I've covered the theory of Dainsleif being Piero the First Harbinger, but regardless of who he is right now, who is to say that Dainsleif does have a safe place? Because unless he's working with A, an interdimensional pocket space to keep the eye of the first teller in like the Serenity Pot, or B, an underground network of people to protect the eye of the first tiller like the Fatui or a secret organization altogether, where in the world is this homeless wanderer supposed to hide the eyeball of a ruin guard? In his coat? I don't know what came over me. Where's the eye of the first field tiller, Dain? I need answers. We also get more information about Dainsleif's past of being the Twilight Sword, and he says that he didn't want to conceal it, we just never asked.
It once stood for the glory of Conria, but now it is but a cruel joke. My curse to bear. Twilight Sword was my title as captain of the Royal Guards when I witnessed the destruction of my entire homeland firsthand. I believe my reluctance to raise it in conversation is quite justified.
But then we have the dialogue that gives us a good time period of when Lamine and Dain traveled together. Dain was busy in the front lines when the destruction first happened, which means that the journey with the Abyss sibling had most likely happened after the Cataclysm, while Lamine was recuperating the loss of her brother. I can't remember if I said this in an old theory, but I'm actually happy that this was the case. It would make more sense that they travel after the Cataclysm, because if Lamine knew that Dain was with her the entire time leading up to the destruction of Conria, she would have no right to be angry at Dain for seemingly abandoning the people when she knows that he was with her journeying. And we do know that Dain was giving direct orders to the Royal Guard while the Cataclysm was happening.
We both partook in a painful journey of searching for our fate. But regrettably, we did not make it to the journey's end together.
Moving on, we have the environment is weakening the curse of immortality. This I think was really fascinating because it's difficult to see a place glowing with purple goo miasma to be a place of purification. Connecting further, we get the revelation that the Hilly Churls are from Conria, and were the citizens and civilians that were caught up in the crossfire. We get more explanation about the curse of immortality. Your body is not physically aging, but your existence is eroding. I believe that this is a theme of immortality that also plagues other immortals in the game. The theme of erosion where the tides of time are constantly beating you down and wearing you thin. Strongly enable to admit that despite their status as gods, even they are not safe from the erosion. For Zhongli in his story quest, he says that it's possibly memory loss. For A, on the other hand, the Raiden Shogun accuses her of her mental and willpower eroding away. If we put it from that perspective, it's possible that all immortal creatures meet the same fate as the Hilichurls or the Abyss.
When the Hilichurls realize that the end is nigh for them, it seems their instinct is to seek out a calm and dark corner of the world in which to finally say goodbye to the centuries of suffering they have endured. And of all the places they could lay down to rest, one that can ease the effects of their curse would surely be their first choice.
Next we meet Halfdan, a member of the Royal Guard, and the revelation that all the Black Serpent Knights were the morphed versions of the Royal Guard. This was actually pretty interesting because Abyss Heralds were thought to be the vanguard of the people, but now it seems that Abyss Heralds classify closer to what Abyss Lectors are. Maybe instead of being militants, they're more clerical. The names Herald and Lectors could be connected to them being evangelists, which allow Royal Guards to be in the form of the Black Serpent Knights.
How is this possible? How could he have retained self-awareness for 500 years without it?
This line of dialogue is actually super heavy in implications. 1. The curse can rob someone of self-awareness. So, if the Abyss Order were people of Conria, and this applies to them, this means that the term self-awareness refers to their mental weakening. The Abyss Heralds and Lectors, being evangelists, sages, and clergy, would be seen as being more heretic, spouting about revelation and the glory of the Abyss like some political activists. On the other hand, Black Serpent Knights who were from the Royal Guard and were disciplined to be a certain way, mentally degraded to concentrate on their actions of loyalty for the next 500 years. That's what they're zeroed in. Or, on the other hand, what if the Abyss Order never experienced the same mental weakening as the Black Serpent Knights? Maybe they also are in possession of this it that Dain is talking about. It could be an ancient artifact, it could be Conrian technology, it could be a delusion, or it just could be plot armor, I have no idea. Now, we also have the implication that there does exist something in this world that can help a person retain consciousness while being cursed with immortality. In my opinion, this can connect well with other potential creatures from Conria that have retained a level of self-awareness. For example, Rhine-daughter, Albedo's master, was the alleged cause of the cataclysm. While it was never confirmed that she has the curse of immortality, it's difficult to think she survived for many years until the point of leaving Albedo in the care of Alice. So assuming that she's also cursed with immortality, she must have had a way to retain her consciousness, because she was still able to create and teach Albedo for possibly centuries. So that's another important consideration. Next, we have knowledge of the ancient civilization being older than Conria. So that's cool. Conrian and Kanamiya existed around the same time period given they had an interaction, but because Dain doesn't know the civilization, this might have predated such history and was already destroyed before Conria and Kanamiya were established. I think the civilization existed among the first human civilizations in Tivat, along with Salvindignir, but I personally haven't played enough of the Chasm to piece enough lore together, so I'll go back on that in another time. And now we move on to the absolute tearjerker of the Black Serpent Knights protecting the Hilichurls. I have nothing else to say to this. This broke my heart. But we do get clarification that Dainsleif was present on the day of the cataclysm, which actually disproves a lot of suspicion that he betrayed the people of Conria, or was cast out by the dynasty prior to the incident. He was there to make the final orders. But what's interesting was Dainsleif said he returned to the palace on the day of the cataclysm, presumably to protect the Eclipse dynasty or the ruling body of Conria. Or maybe it's something else entirely. We don't actually know.
Because we, of course, were royal guards. But this would mean nothing in the events that followed. Royals, gentry, common folk. These identities made no difference.
And this line solidifies the events in the cataclysm. If you've never read The Self-Proclaimed Prophet and The Breeze Amidst the Forest, you should, because it details the events of Conria's cataclysm very well. Conria's first problem was the alchemist Gold allegedly raising her army to destroy the entirety of Conria. But what's interesting was that the initial problem was already done. Conria overturned that problem and was proposed to have been saved by the wrath of Gold and her army. The problem was that Celestia set the land to burn. This is what Dain means by the events that followed. Conria had already been saved from the initial catastrophe, but Celestia still delivered the promise of divine retribution. Imagine how painful that is to hear. It's possible that it's punishment for other transgressions, but remember, even if the upper ruling class was at fault for any of the events of the cataclysm, Celestia still affected the civilians and the common folk. When we arrive to the water pool that's supposed to keep the curse at bay, something about Dain's perspective on the curse is actually quite fascinating.
The pool must be part of the entire city structure, a relic of this ancient civilization. And more importantly, it is the very thing that is weakening the curse. Here, my whole body feels more at peace than it has in a long time. The effect is stronger here than it was before. And I think it's because that water pool has something akin to a cleansing effect.
Cleansing? So that means the water in that pool can wash away the curse for good?
No, that would be impossible. I have lived with this curse for 500 years, and I have been fully conscious the entire time. Suffice to say, no one understands the curse like I do. Even now, I can feel the curse slowly permeating my entire being, becoming part of me, slowly but surely replacing me. Perhaps it may be possible to suppress the corrosive effect of the curse for a time, but cleansing it entirely, consider it tantamount to burning away an integral part of your body. It is not a process that one could ever hope to survive.
When I actually first played this, I immediately criticized Dainsleif for several things. If the Abyss were trying to use the pool's magic to cleanse the curse, why was he stopping them? Surely, if he believed that he fought for the people of Conria, the curse was something that he needed to deal with. So why is Dain so against the removal of the curse of immortality? But now that I think about it, what Dain says is actually very fascinating. Dain says that he is slowly but surely being replaced by the curse, but removing it is equal to removing a part of yourself. The first time we get a reference to Dain's curse was actually all the way back in 1.4.
You reek of a corruption familiar to me. Then we are the same. We're both dangerous. But dangers from outside of the Abyss Order must be caught and caged.
We also note that just because a creature is with the curse of immortality, they aren't inherently Abyss Order, as we've seen with the Black Serpent Knights. I theorize that if the curse is ever to be removed, a person immediately regains that 500 years of lost lifespan. Remember, the curse is the only thing keeping them alive for so long. But the problem with that theory is that Dainsleif says that the curse of immortality is akin to eroding slowly, so the long life isn't without its drawbacks. So now we're presented with a contradiction. Dain says that the life given by the curse is equivalent to a slow descent into a loss of existence, but removing the curse itself is like cutting off an integral part of yourself. This man is truly filled with contradictions ever since we met him. Whatever the reason Dain is so against removing the curse, we know that the Abyss Order is trying to revive the people of Khaenri'ah to their former glory. That's the purpose of the pool. And now we have the flower known as Intivat, which is one of the most questionable flowers that has ever been named, but I digress. This actually supports my theory that if a being from Khaenri'ah was to return to their former state, that 500 years would relapse on them and their body wouldn't be able to handle the time span.
It would only last 2 weeks before wilting. But if you were to pluck one and take it out of Khaenri'ah, the petals would stop growing and turn hard. Only when it finally returned to its home soil would the petals grow soft once more, and finally turn to dust.
Also, this is the flower in Lumine's hair and most likely in the trailer of Genshin Impact's Archon quests, meaning we will return to the Sea of Flowers in the future, where assumably we will fight Dainsleif and save our sibling. Well, that's ominous. Following this, we get the stunning revelation of the Abyss siblings' plans of reviving Khaenri'ah and removing the curse of the people.
Surely they would rather return to the natural cycle of life and death as soon as possible than continue to exist as they are, without a shred of dignity. They cannot be made to continue paying the price for those so-called sins.
First, we now have confirmation that the Abyss are trying to thwart the heavenly principles. In 1.4, they only mentioned that they wanted to topple the divine thrones, but now we actually get the proper name drop of the principles, which means it's interesting that the Abyss and the Fatui actually shared the same goals, confronting the heavenly principles, I mean. This was an excerpt from the funerary mask of Senora. So now we have two organizations, created 500 years ago by a Khaenri'ah figure, fighting the heavenly principle. One is present humanity and the other are actual citizens of the catastrophe. Honestly, they should just do a collaboration. And I wouldn't doubt that if that were the case in the future. Both seem to be hostile against the gods. Anyway, from that we also get the revival of the homeland. This plan was actually foreshadowed all the way back in Mondstadt's Archon quest.
Your Highness, your humble servant returns. When your homeland returns to this world, we shall revel in its glory.
At the time, we had no idea if the word homeland was the siblings' original planet or Khaenri'ah, but now we have slight confirmation that it's Khaenri'ah. Homeland returning couldn't possibly mean the siblings' original homeworld if it never came to Tevat in the first place. Khaenri'ah, on the other hand, would be so much easier to explain. This also means that Lumine did have sentimentality with Khaenri'ah. The mention of sins by the sibling is reminiscent to how the ancient civilizations refer to themselves. Sins of Tokoyo for the Enkanomiya, the great sinner alchemist Gold who destroyed Khaenri'ah, and Kaya even calls the Khaenri'ahns sinners. Fascinating. Dainsleif's answers following this is very pessimistic.
I told you already that no one knows this curse better than I, having lived with it for 500 years. There is no redemption. There is no undoing the curse. Trying to remove it by force will achieve nothing but to inflict further suffering. So make sure you are clear in your mind. You have to tell yourself, they are no longer human. If you cling to false hope and allow yourself to become too emotionally invested, the only way is down. You will end up just like them, mired in hypocrisy.
The traveler's response to this is actually pretty telling, because remember, this is the traveler that witnessed the Vision Hunt decree. The traveler understands what extremes can do to people, and therefore, Aether can't accept Lumine's actions. We finally see the diversion between the two twins leading up to the endgame. A 1% chance of redemption versus a 99% chance of suffering and death. Nobody has the right to make that choice on another living being's behalf, especially not when these hilichurls have already chosen the end that they desire. Honestly, this is fascinating, by the way, because mostly when it comes to shonen hero stories, it's stereotypical for the protagonist to agree with redemption. It's a popular motif for a hero to go, "If there was even one chance of redemption to save the world, wouldn't you go for it?" But this time, the protagonist actually thwarts the idea and considers that 1% isn't worth all the cruelty the Abyss are doing to Tevat. Moving on, we conclude the story with the Traveler and Dain stopping the Abyss Lector, and the very stunning cutscene of Halfdan's sacrifice.
Conria didn't fall, did it? Since you're still here.
Correct. So, no need to revive the homeland.
But yes, that's all my personal thoughts about the Chasm's Archon quest, and I'll definitely be breaking down the Chasm lore in future videos when I get around to playing it. I really enjoyed this Archon quest. I think it did what it needed to do, and it wasn't too short or was too long. We didn't really need to get emotionally invested in Halfdan, but more so contextualizing Dain's perspective on the whole situation, which I think it did wonderfully. The Archon quest for me was short and sweet and simple. The plot was executed appropriately, and there are enough plot threads to connect it to future Archon quests. But yes, that's all for me today. Nevertheless, my name is Aster, and thank you for chilling with me.